Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. This is a part of a larger program called the Holocaust, Genocide, and Contemporary Bioethics Program. My name's Matt Winia. I direct the Center for Bioethics and Humanities here at the University of Colorado's Anschutz campus, but we actually serve all of the campuses of CU, as well as having an important public education mission. So last night we had an event around commemoration of the Holocaust and children's experiences in the Holocaust in particular up at Boulder. Tomorrow we'll be doing medical grand rounds at the University of Colorado Hospital. Today we did a grand rounds at the University of Colorado's Children's Hospital. On Thursday we'll be in Colorado Springs speaking at the Colorado Springs Medical School branch of U of C. And on Friday we'll be doing a public program downtown at the UC Denver campus. So we are very proud of this program. It's really a flagship program of the Center for Bioethics and Humanities, and it would not be possible without the generous support of a number of very important individuals and organizations. Perhaps the lead sponsor this year is the M.B. Glassman Foundation. They have been our lead sponsor 2 years in a row, so we are particularly grateful to the Glassman Foundation for allowing us to expand this program each year. We started out 3 years ago with just a program on this campus and an event downtown, and now we're having events across the state. So it's been a terrific growth trajectory, and the center is very pleased with that trajectory. We also want to thank really the founder of this whole program, who's sitting here, and I'm going to give him a chance to say a word in a moment. But Dr. Bill Silvers, without him, none of us would be standing here today doing this program. Bill and I met a year or so before I moved to Colorado, and I had been doing work with the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. for several years when I lived in Chicago and was working at the American Medical Association. And Bill had heard about this work and asked if we could get together because he wanted to make sure there was a program about the roles of health professionals in the Holocaust that would be present every year on our campus. And he gave a founding donation to make sure that this program would get started and would be healthy and robust. And for that, I think all of us will always be grateful. I also want to thank Jewish Colorado for important financial support this year. And we have a number of other organizations that have been rotating on the screen, too many to name them all, who are important promotional sponsors for this set of events. But I want to call special attention to Stacy Gallen, who's here with us tonight. She's with the Maimonides Institute for Medicine, Ethics, and the Holocaust out in New Jersey. And MIMA, the Maimonides Institute, has been involved with us for 2 years now, really integral to the program both last year and this year. So special thanks, Stacy, for being with us. Thanks. I know this is a long list of thank yous before we get started, but I also really have to, in case you didn't notice it on your way in, thank the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. for loaning us the Deadly Medicine Creating the Master Race exhibit. We have this very special opportunity to have this traveling exhibit on our campus from now until May 22nd. If anyone here is interested in organizing a group tour, we have trained docents. We have about 20 trained docents who are capable of taking a classroom or a church group or whatever organization you'd like, or individuals for that matter, and walking through the exhibit with you. It is quite a powerful exhibit. There's a lot of information, and it is nice to have a docent with you to help to sort of synthesize and assimilate and honestly just process the information in the exhibit, which can be quite challenging, especially for those of us in the healing professions. In that regard, let me start by introducing Dr. Patricia Haber-Rice, who will be serving as sort of a co-interlocutor with me tonight. Patricia and I go back about 15 years to when the Deadly Medicine exhibit was first mounted at the museum in Washington, D.C. She is the senior historian at the Holocaust Museum in their Mandel Center, which is the academic branch of the museum. At the time we met, Patricia was the senior historian for medical crimes, so she is a specialist in the programs described in this exhibit, and she also has a specialization in the experiences of children in the Holocaust. And one of our themes this year has really been the experiences of children in genocide across generations. So that is the introduction to our program tonight. We have with us a panel of extraordinary individuals, survivors of genocides across the generations. We'll start here with Jack Adler. Mr. Adler told me that he came to the US in 1946, and his first American name was Hey You. So we'll be calling you Jack Hey You Adler for the remainder of the evening. Jack's last address before moving to the US was Dachau. So he was a survivor of a concentration camp, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. I'm going to skip because I want to go in chronological order. So Rosalind, I can't pronounce your last name.
Kirkle.
Rosalind Kirkle, I still probably didn't pronounce it well.
Perfect.
Moved to the US, sorry, I have to get to my notes here, in 1949, after living for about 4 years in a displaced persons camp in southern Germany, again following the Holocaust. And then, in chronological order, Sama Karim moved to the US in 2008 after spending some time in, is it Jordan? In Jordan. She moved here in 2008 when she was in 3rd grade, learned English within a year, and graduates this year from South High School in the top 10% of her class. She'll be attending Boulder as an undergraduate next year in neurosciences and intends to be a pre-med student. Finally, sorry, I'm getting emotional already. We have barely started. Finally, Marwan moved here in 2016 when he was 16 years old after his family had left Iraq to Turkey, and then after a brief time in Turkey, he moved to the US. Are you also a senior, Marwan? He's a junior, so he has one more year before deciding where you go to college. But you're a good swimmer, is that correct? Is that a different Marwan?
That's me.
I Googled him before, and he's a very good swimmer. So let's start the conversation, and I'm going to turn the first question over to Patricia.
What about Bill?
Oh, sorry. I'm going to ask Bill to welcome you all here as well.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Thank you all for coming, for being here and being a part of this. I'd like to recognize the inspiration of the program in the late 90s, early 2000s was Vivian Spitz, German Catholic woman who was a court reporter. You perhaps knew her in the court system. Court reporter at the Nuremberg medical war crimes trial. And she wished to be a recorder at that trial because she couldn't believe that her ancestry, of German Catholic ancestry, could participate in such treatment of man, inhumanity to mankind. And so she went there, and then she really didn't speak about it very much until the late 1980s, when there was a lot of Holocaust revisionism. And in the high school next to where she lived, history teacher, Holocaust denier. The students toward the end of the semester were telling their parents the Holocaust didn't happen because we learned about it in school. And only then, and they went through almost the entire semester being taught that the Holocaust didn't happen and didn't know that And so she dedicated, after she retired, and she'd gone up through the court system, U.S. House of Representatives, and she dedicated the rest of her life to speaking about this, which a number of our survivors and witnesses are now doing also, while we have a chance to hear people who saw it or lived it. So that was in the early 2000s, and then in 2008, there are a number of us. Mark Levine, who's sitting behind me, Peter and Peter Gottlieb, Moshe and Marilyn Levy, and I began the Holocaust Contemporary Bioethics program, believing that you have to know history so you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And it was, we had our challenges, and then when Matt came in 3-4 years ago, the depth and the breadth of this program is really due to the commitment of Matt Winia, who's one of the brilliant physician bioethicists in the country. We're fortunate to have him here. And then we took a vision going forward as making this the Holocaust Genocide Contemporary Bioethics program, knowing that these kinds of things are still going on, as we'll see today again. I think that if you get really engaged with what's going on here after seeing the exhibit, and if you'd like to be a docent, maybe they'll put together another class for docents because we'd like to get more. And please invite your friends, your faith, invite your schools, invite your organizations to come and visit this, and we'll do everything that we can to host them here while this exhibit is here until May 22nd. We're very fortunate for the Holocaust Museum to be able to have it here for this period of time. Special thank you goes to Malaya Himber, who is somewhere here, who fortunately is still with us after putting in 120-hour days over the past couple of weeks. And to David Weil, who is the Director of Operations Ombudsman and very unofficial photographer here, who brings it up. Very special thanks to our speakers. I have become indebted to you speaking forth in the generation that witnessed it and in the generation that's experienced it. And special thanks to all of you who are here today who are spending your time with us. So thank you, everyone.
Now we'll turn things over to Patricia.
Thank you. That's perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. So as Matt has said, a theme of our program this year is the experiences of children in the Holocaust and contemporary genocides and how those experiences shape their lives. And so I'm going to turn to Rosalind as our first survivor speaker and ask, and I understand your life experiences really span the spectrum because you eventually became a gerontologist who specializes in the care of elderly people, but you were also a hidden child during the Holocaust. You were 2 years old when your parents hid you with Lithuanian Christians, and that couple was more or less an elderly couple. Today, Matt said, well, they're 60, and I'm like, well, that's like 5 years older than me. So, but an elderly, basically elderly couple took you in and raised you as their own. And even as I understand it, when your father, who survived, came to retrieve you, you didn't want to go with him at first. And I've heard this is a very common experience of hidden children who were hidden very young during the Holocaust. So do you think there were ways in which your experiences with that couple as a very young hidden child affected who you were and what you became in later life?
Absolutely, absolutely. Their warmth, their welcoming. I used to call her Mama. I put my arms around her when a stranger came. My father didn't recognize, yes. But I was influenced not only by their warmth and their acceptance of me, but also the environment, the situation that I couldn't change. So while they gave me comfort, if anybody came to the door, I had to go run and hide. And there was a box I had to go into, a chest in a little off room, you always lived with fear. The neighbors. But I got a new name, Zulita, not a very Jewish-sounding name, and I was baptized, and I celebrated their holidays. It was a subculture, and the positive thing about that is that I think it contributed to me being what I call live and let live, where I was tolerant and more accepting of other people, of differences, of races. Now, I mean, if somebody passes me by on the road, or if someone is transgender, it doesn't faze me. I think that's a positive. I like that kind of thing. The influence on older people. I remember when I was always drawn to older people. I had great rapport. I didn't have any grandparents. Where did that come from? Well, this is where it came from. I'm pretty sure it was in my psyche. And another advantage, well, it's both the circumstances as well as the support that I learned take charge skills. What that means is there was nobody to take care of me. And this is true for a lot of children who were children. Parents had adult able-bodied people had to go to work, and they were left with maybe an older sister, brother. In my case, I had a sister who was 7 years old, 7 years older than me. And she was left to look after me and my brother, who was 4 originally. And so that meant that I was left by myself a lot. And all the way through, when I came to America at the age of 8, my parents went to work. They didn't think, oh, gee, we're gonna need a babysitter. Oh my gosh. So so I was the first key kid that I knew of. And I had to amuse myself and take care of myself. And it was unfortunate, but it turned into something as a skill. And the skill made it possible that I was able to create programs. I put blood, sweat, and tears into developing pioneering adult daycare in Colorado. But long before that, I created other kinds of programs, a singles group called Dinner with Ozzie and Harriet, dining out kind of group. So there are positive things that came from negative things, and the other way around. On the negative side, on the other hand, I developed psychological baggage. I was traumatized. Nobody said anything to me. Nobody explained anything to me. After the children's action, the Kinderaktie in the ghetto in Lithuania, my mother came home and saw that her son was gone, and there were 2 of us left. She talked to a friend in the ghetto who had successfully smuggled out her little girl and said, Bella, please, can you help me save my little Rezala? Because they had taken away 800 children from the ghetto. 800 children. And she said she did. She did help me. She got me out. But nobody said that somebody's going to take me to a new place. There'll be new faces, new people. And nobody explained anything like that. So I was traumatized. I was deeply insecure. I had nightmares. I lacked nurturing parenting because my parents were in the ghetto. They were hungry, they were weak, they were anxious, they were fearful, they couldn't control anything, they were powerless. They couldn't give any mothering, any nurturing. And so I was left on my own. Not a normal life. Where was the warmth and the love and the affection? And they couldn't give that, or the joy and the fun and the laughter. Bella said she'd come to visit me sometimes when I was staying was being hidden. And Rezala, why You never smiled. What did I have to smile about? I got care, but there were negative things. So, so that tells you a little bit about being a hidden child, being a child where Jewish children were considered useless mouths, and 1.5 million were murdered, and I was fortunate to survive, but with some additional baggage.
So much, Rosamond. And now, hey you. Am I supposed to say hey you? Okay. Jack, you were a teenager when you survived a death march to Dachau, and you spent the last 70 years working to make sure the events of the Holocaust aren't ever repeated. There's even a movie about your life and work called Surviving Skokie. Yet many, of course, at our museum as well, that's something that we're very concerned about, that genocide happens all the time. So something like this can happen again. And that even today, those echoes of the Holocaust, that's our theme of our programming this week, remain with us today. So you must get a lot of questions about whether you think it will happen again or how genocide might happen. But I'm going to ask you the opposite question, and perhaps one with more hope. What do you think's changed in the world since the Holocaust happened in the 1930s and 40s? What gives you hope today that the world is different, that we can prevent genocide in the future?
Unfortunately, humanity didn't learn much at all. People are dying as I speak in many parts of the world. Children are being subjected to poison gas in Syria as I speak. We haven't learned much. I was in 2 ghettos in Poland first, in Pabianice, the city of my birth, and then in the ghetto of Lodz. Then they took us to Auschwitz, Birkenau, from there to Kaufering concentration camp, and from there to Dachau. I was liberated on the death march out of Dachau. We were taken out from Dachau, a little over 7,000 people. We marched all during daylight hours. At night, we would sleep in the woods. They would take people to the other side. They were given shovels to dig ditches. When those ditches were completed, they were ordered to line up around the perimeters of the ditches, and they were shot to death. When we were freed, May 1, 1945, by the United States 3rd and 7th Army, under the command of General Dwight David Eisenhower and George Patton, there were less than 4,000 of us left. I was 16. I wouldn't have made it one more day. If you were unable to continue the march, they wouldn't leave you behind alive, they kill you. I was immediately hospitalized in a newly formed displaced persons camp. When I was checked into the hospital, I weighed 65 pounds. I was hospitalized for 90 days. During my hospitalization, the International Red Cross and the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Rehabilitation Administration, conducted surveys of survivors throughout Europe and compiled lists of those survivors, and those lists were provided to the various displaced persons camps. That's when I found out I was the sole survivor of my immediate family of 6, and one of 5, including my extended family. What has humanity learned? Well, I've been dedicated for the last 26 years to speak to students, civic groups, church groups, our military around the country, and at Auschwitz for the March of the Living. We haven't learned much, and we will not until humanity is ready and willing to respect each other. Mutual respect and the golden rule, do unto others as you like them to do unto you, is the key to the survival of humanity. I'm being asked many times, what do you tell someone who denies the Holocaust? I tell them that those are the same geniuses who think the earth is flat.
Do we have the audio clip? We had a third person who was going to join us tonight, and we're going to turn now to some of the sort of medical aspects of this. Layla Morrison, who was a nurse, an emergency medicine nurse during the war, and treated soldiers wounded in battle. She witnessed firsthand the conditions of the Buchenwald concentration camp at Liberation. Unfortunately, for reasons of a personal family emergency, she was not able to be here tonight. But I want to play just a really short clip of her recent interview on Colorado Matters, and as a way of sort of bridging to talking to our two younger guests tonight.
You left Europe in 1945. What do you remember about coming back to the United States?
We were mighty thankful to get back to the States. And one of the things you'll probably be surprised at was the thing that impressed us so much as we looked out from the ship coming into the harbor. All the windows were in. We hadn't seen anything, but all the buildings across Europe were all blown out.
Oh, the fact that buildings had windows was such a different sight from what you'd seen.
Well, that's true, because we hadn't seen them for the whole time. And we'd say, oh, look, there's no windows blown out. They all have glass in them.
You had been so used to the war zone, you forgot
guess.
what it looked like not to be in one.
It was wonderful. Oh, how great it was to put our feet on American soil.
You speak about the war a lot these days. What do you think is the most important thing for younger people to understand?
Well, I think, to put it kind of in simple words, but it isn't simple, freedom is not free. We paid a real high price for it, just like anybody that's in war.
So let's talk a little about echoes of the Holocaust today. Both of you left Iraq as essentially as refugees of a untenable political situation and personal situations. Sama, when you hear these folks who experience similar need to leave their country and to be protected from the risk of death, are there things you hear in their experience that really resonate with you in your own experience? Or on the other side, are there aspects of being a student here today from Iraq that really are very different from the experiences of prior generations of refugees?
Well, I would say the main difference between our experiences is that as refugees living in Iraq, you had two choices. You lived or you died. There was no, like Jackie, you were talking about being in the death march and kind of having very little, but that option of survival, like there was something to survive. In Iraq, you were at home, you got bombed, you died. There was no place where you kind of had to survive. It was, you were alive one day and then you were dead. There was no ghetto, there was nothing where you were kind of in a buffer zone between, am I gonna live, am I gonna die, I don't know. That was kind of everyday life. And something else about life in Iraq as a war zone is that life went on in all senses of the word. Like you went to work, my parents would go to the hospitals and my dad would come home and he's like, oh, 2 of my colleagues were killed today. And then he would go back to work the next day. And so, and I don't know if that's good or bad, to be quite honest with you, because in a sense, there was still that sense of like death looming over your head and you didn't know what was gonna happen. But at the same time, I feel grateful to have been able to eat and live comfortably, because at least if I died the next day, then I had lived comfortably the previous day with my family. And so that was something that, to be quite honest with you, I still don't know if that's positive or negative, probably a little bit of both. That's the biggest difference that I would say.
So we were talking beforehand, and it must have been a very difficult decision actually for your parents. They're both physicians with presumably good jobs, and when they got here, they're unable to work, unable to you can't just transfer your medical license. How did your dad cope with this situation?
Well, there was...
And your mom, but for that matter, by the way.
Yeah, so it was a sense of priority, to be honest. They loved their careers, they valued their careers and their ability to help people, but at the same time, it was survival. I mean, they wanted opportunities for their kids to live, they wanted to live comfortably with their families, and so they chose to come here. And we weren't quite sure if their licenses would be taken away or not, because when we moved to Jordan, they were still able to work as physicians. And so that was a possibility, but my parents weren't sure about it. But when we came here, their licenses were taken away, and both of them started working as phlebotomists. And then my dad retook his board exams throughout working as a phlebotomist and trying to make enough money for us to live here. And then he passed his board exams and he did a residency for 3 years in Texas. And he actually just finished his residency this past year and he started working in Oklahoma. My mom could not regain her degree because one of them had to continue to work because we had to live, and my dad was working part-time while he was studying. But she did do a graduate program with Denver Health, and so she's a lab tech now.
Marwan, what are your reflections as you hear the experiences of prior generations of refugees as children about your own experience? You and Jack moved to the U.S. at the same age, but 50 years, 70 years apart.
Correct. So there's a. So it's true that me and Sama came both from Iraq, but so yeah, I was born in Iraq, 1999. Lived there till 2003, and then the American invasion started in Iraq, and it was really dangerous. It was not just the American invasion; it was like civil war at the same time. So my dad has some family in Syria, so he took all of us back to Syria because it was safer there. So we lived there from 2003 all the way till 2000, sorry, and 11, and then unfortunately the civil war started in Syria again. My dad had no choice but to go back to Iraq because like things in Syria were just recent happening and it were like really, really, really dangerous. So the plan B was just to go back to Iraq. We went back to Iraq. It was like 2000, the end of 2012, I believe, or 11, like beginning of 2012. We were trying to just like kind of continue our lives there, but like it was really difficult because of the civil war between Sunni and Shia. So my dad and my mom were Sunnis, and I attended a school in Baghdad, the capital, to just like keep going as a normal kid. But I was not able to because I almost got killed twice because of they knew that my family were Sunnis, not Shia. And my dad like noticed that it's not any better from Syria. So we had no choice but to go to Turkey because it's like our last resource. Even though it was like really, really hard to go to a new country with a new language in a place that you don't know anyone there, but we didn't have any other choice. We moved to Turkey. We stayed there for 3 years until we got approved to move to the United States after background check and really, really, really long background check. During this 3 years, when I was 12 years old, all the way till 15 years old, it was really tough. 3 years. It was not just it's not what like a normal teenager kid will experience in like life. I had to work every day from 8, like at least 12 hours or 14 hours just to support my family because my dad lost his job back in Syria and he couldn't rebuild his job in Iraq because things were not any better. And as a refugee in Turkey, you do not pay equally, so he had all of us to work to support the family. Just to go a little bit back, my experience in Syria, I was like 11 years old when the war happened, and the fact that you can't, like, you're in fear all the time because like you're fear of like you're scared that from even your own neighbor, like even families in Syria will turn apart just because some of the family were with the government, and some of the families were like with the rebellions. And like I know families who were neighbors for us, like brothers who like really had big conflict between each other and had to move like different like city just to not see each other. So imagine if brothers went that far, what would the people who like not even related to you do to you? Like it was really dangerous. It was like just surviving, just like surviving, basically just trying to survive. That's what all you're thinking about, because at any second you can get killed. Like I remember when I was like once going to school, I was just stopped by the Syrian army and asked if I show my phone so they can check all the messaging and stuff if I am any activist in the revolution that happened in Syria. And for 11 years old, being stopped by the army who were supposed to defend you, kind of being aggressive against you and trying to make you feel like you are just an enemy, was not a good experience at all.
You know, I'm supposed to turn to Patricia for a question, but I feel like I would like to ask the rest of you to reflect on something Jack said, which was just depressing as heck. Um, we haven't learned much. And I wonder if any of you would like to refine that or answer it in regard to are there things that we have learned, or are there things that really we ought to be learning from both your history and this more recent history? Are there ways to learn from this legacy?
So the fact that like just 2 days ago, and chemical attack that happened in Syria, a lot of kids were killed. I even didn't check the city because when I saw the video, I could not finish it because like these are my people being killed, and no one is taking action about it. Like no offense, the UN will consider the situation. Oh, thank you. Like no one is taking any action. I think it's just there's no difference between now or 50 years ago, just different region.
Have to educate humanity as a whole. There's 7 billion of us on this planet Earth. All of us, no matter how we identify ourselves, by religion, by ethnicity, by color, belong to one race, the human race. And no matter how we identify ourselves, no group of people has a monopoly on good or bad, because we do belong to one race. And there are those people, unfortunately, who are very divisive, and they are in power. They may have a political position or religious, and they divide us. They say, you are worse than I am better than you are. No, we all belong to one race. And until we recognize it and treat each other the way we like to be treated, this will go on, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, I completely agree. And kind of going based off of that, during the Holocaust and World War II, even though the general American population may not have been as up to date with everything that was going on with the concentration camps and the genocide of the Jewish people, the government knew. They knew the whole time, and they didn't do anything. Just like today, the government knows about Syria, they know about Burma, they know everything, and like they did in Iraq. And so, um, like Jack was saying, as a human race, we need to come together. I think it's up to the people, because clearly the government, the people in power, are not living up to what they're supposed to be doing. Whatever they're choosing to do, they're not doing what they have a responsibility to the people in need. And so it's up to us to come together and either make them or figure out a way to do it ourselves. If there's one thing we learned, I think it should be that.
I'd like to say something. I think everything is local. I think the wars and the mentalities and something are local. What's happening in Burma, it seemed like it's so far away. I feel the same way as Syria with the poison that they put into the air recently with the children. I can't stand it that the world is standing by. I expect the United Nations, which isn't a matter of being tribal and so on. It's responsible to more worldly pictures, and they're not doing anything. And I think we have a great deal of divisiveness in our country, and our president is thinking about making a reaction in Syria. I don't understand why he can't be removed. I guess it's local.
I assume by removed you're talking about Bashar al-Assad?
That's exactly who I meant. You're very good.
Okay, so I'm going to try and draw the four of you into maybe a discussion with each other, because you, despite the 50 years, you share a lot of common experiences in the way that you led a childhood very sort of a lost childhood because of the events of either the Holocaust or what happened in Iraq. So I was thinking, children tend to be overrepresented as victims and as survivors of genocide in every case that we see. So I want to see, because it's an argument that I have in my book, Children in the Holocaust, that children contend in very different ways than do their adult contemporaries or their parents. And what do you think is the way that you're affected differently because of the trauma that each of you experienced, and how do you think you reacted differently than did your adult contemporaries or your parents?
You know, a
Please,
child,
Rosalind.
like I was a tabula rasa. I mean, I hadn't had all those wonderful, happy, laughing, playful experiences as other normal children or in normal times. And so therefore, whatever I experienced that traumatized me, it was deeper. It was lasting. I didn't have anything else. An adult who's had 10 years or 20 years of, oh yeah, I remember that Christmas or Hanukkah or holidays or travel, they've experienced happiness. When you haven't had that, you're born into the situation, as I was. It just goes much deeper, and it stays with you.
Does anyone want to add to that?
I want to completely agree with all of that. I think when you are a kid, and I know for me, when I was born into the situation and war and conflict into Iraq, and my mom is Shia, my dad is Sunni, and so we never had a safe place to live, so there was always conflict. When you're born into that, I didn't even realize. I thought, that was life. You went to bed, you were scared, whatever. That was life. I didn't know anything different. It wasn't until I came here, and I remember in third grade we would read these books, and it was about picking apples and making apple pie, and all the students in the class, they would talk about their experiences with family, and oh yeah, like I remember back in that year when there was that giant snowstorm and we built snowmen, and I would just sit there and I was like, well, what's wrong with me? I never had that. Like, and so that's when I felt that discrepancy between my own childhood and experiences and what was normal per se. And that's when it kind of settled in that, like, oh, okay, I'm different. I went, and that was a whole other thing, dealing with that and becoming okay with everything. But yeah, I just want to second everything you just said.
I would also add that one of the hardest things to me were when the Syrian conflict started. I remember seeing both my parents, my mom and my dad. They were trying as hard they can, just like any parents would try to do, is just to just basically suck up all the like tragedy they've been going through, just to make us to show it to us as it's like safe place and just make us feel comfortable. We were just young. Even though they tried really hard, I've always seen that look on my dad's face that was really sad and like tired and like just want things to be better for us. Also, when I moved from Iraq to Turkey, I was really, I'll say, hurt because the rest of like my grandparents did not come with us, and I did not understand why back then. But I don't really sure if that's the reason now. But like when I grew up now and looking back at it, I would think just because they grew up in that country since they were kids, they have memories. They lived their life there. Maybe it's even harder for them to leave the place, which is be better now. So like, also like, looking on the bright side from all that, I think I saw the real life faster than any other uh, teenager kid will see it, which is, I think, really good. That helped me really with the challenges that I faced in the beginning when I came to the United States. Made me value all the opportunities that have been given to me here, which I've noticed, unfortunately, a lot of people do not notice here, and take the advantage of these opportunities as much as I can.
Want to add anything?
Listening to these young people remind me of my childhood. Adults knew more or less what's going on. They had Kristallnacht, the year 1938. Wouldn't share it, but I was 10 years old.
They maybe wanted to protect
Still
you.
any fear,
right?
of course. So it reminds me a lot what these kids went through, and no question about it.
You know, I think some of the older survivors from the Holocaust said, "Oh, she's too little. She won't understand that, or she'll forget it. She'll be okay. She doesn't need to know that." This kind of an attitude. I didn't know what Jewish was. I didn't know anything about that, and I'm what? You know, it just they didn't give credit. There's a way to explain things to children of most ages. So they have some kind of knowledge.
You know, anti-Semites, Jew haters, don't tell you one thing about the Jewish people. That's why they've been successful up to this very day. There are 7 billion, I mentioned it to the students before, there are 7 billion of us on this planet. A third are Christian, 2.3 billion. 22%, 1.5 billion plus, are Muslim. 14 million are Jewish, a fifth of 1%. And what those anti-Semites don't tell you is that a fifth of 1% of the world population are the recipients of 22% of Nobel Prizes. And what they don't tell you that some of their loved ones or they themselves would be crippled today if it weren't for a Jewish doctor, Jonas Salk, who discovered the anti-polio vaccine. They don't tell you that. Religion is to preach faith, not hate. Those who use religion to justify the spread of hatred are nothing but evil beings. And you have the head of Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, religious leader, who states Israel should be wiped off the map. The Holocaust is a myth. To me, he is the Hitler of the Muslim world. Nothing more, nothing less. Most Muslim people are decent people, but there is a radical element, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and many others, who have one goal, the destruction of Western civilization, if we allow them to do so.
Turn to the audience and ask if there are questions or comments from folks.
Well, tell them there are no stupid questions, only stupid answers.
Well
Ask
done.
any question, we guarantee a stupid answer. Is that what you said?
Exactly.
Very similar to what
You
you said.
must be hard of hearing.
My mother was a survivor of the Holocaust, so was my father, a survivor of the Holocaust. My mom survived Kristallnacht and went on as a refugee to live in Switzerland and then came to the US. She just passed a few weeks ago. I was watching a Shoah video that was made of her just a few days ago, and it makes me think about who's making videos and taking down these stories of these young people today and what they have experienced, and making it, putting it in the books and not making up stories about what's happened, and avoiding the future genocide deniers of the current and future who will say this is a big lie. You know, they're already saying there was no gas, there were no people killed. This is all fake news. So I think that that has been a valuable thing for Holocaust survivors, that there is at least some documentation available of what these individuals survived. And my generation is going to, I actually was asked yesterday if I would come speak at a school on behalf of my parents, because they can't speak, they're gone. And I thought, oh, I am that generation now. I need to go speak at schools like Mr. Adler is doing. But there are very few Mr. Adlers left. And so it's going to be Bill and me and the rest of us who have parents who survived. But for these young folks with similar stories or different stories and terrible, terrible life-changing experiences, who is going to be the Steven Spielberg who documents their difficult passage?
In addition to telling your stories on Facebook, are there people who are documenting the narrative experiences of the Syrian, Iraq refugees?
I understand that among Holocaust survivors, the child survivors, now we were a very small percent of survivors, and we're the last generation to bear witness, including
Hey,
Jack.
you.
Hey, you.
Hey, hey, you.
My son,
You're
who,
never going to get past that.
my son, who happens to be a twice Emmy-winning cinematographer, just made a movie which won first awards in Poland. The title of the movie is Surviving Skokie. Skokie is a suburb of Chicago. When the mid-70s, the American Nazis tried to march on, and there is a documentary about my life too, so if you wish to see it, it's
We
available
didn't
on
get to talk
Amazon.
about this beforehand, but I lived in Evanston for 18 years,
Evans.
next door to Skokie,
I live next door to you in Wilmette.
in Wilmette. We'll catch up later.
What I wanted to add, just a few more words. I've read that the child survivors have produced more books and videos and things like that than the older generation, which is sad. Which is we want to hear from them, but they did not speak up. So
There's more of a move to speak, and
Yes.
you know, it really
Yeah.
comes out in the 1990s, and so, and for many survivors, it's too late before they began to speak. But the child survivors, those very youngest survivors, are witnesses now, and we're so grateful for all of you. And most of the survivor volunteers that we have now at the museum that do work giving first-person interviews and public programs and in our speakers bureaus, they're doing yeoman's work because they're the last voices we have. So I'm grateful for both of you. I'm grateful for all of you. And hopefully there'll be, the museum is doing through their Center for Genocide Prevention, we are starting to interview some Syrian refugees, but we do need a common base that gets your stories as well to document genocide and mass atrocities in the Middle East. I hope it's there as it is for these guys.
A connection that we might want to spend a moment on is this sort of middle generation and the notion of generational trauma, right? The reality, of course, is that having a parent who went through this, even if you were born afterwards, has an impact on you. Bill, I don't know if you'd be willing to share the story that you shared last night, but it was quite an affecting story, I thought, in terms of the ways in which trauma as a young person can be transmitted down through generations even.
Well, thanks,
I'm
Matt.
totally putting you on the spot here, but
I'll be happy to. Actually, I met Jackie in a second generation group, if I can share both of our stories, in the mid-'80s when we were both recently moved to Denver. When the children of survivors started to talk to each other about how we felt different from others and how our upbringing was different than our classmates, et cetera. And some were able to go to seek psychologic counseling, earlier, and some of us waited until later. So what I said last night is that I only had the courage to go and seek psychological counseling when I met the other second generation kids who seemed to be very functional, some not functional so much, but those who were functional still had a lot of baggage, of psychological baggage. And when I went to see a psychiatrist, et cetera, my parents said, "You can't be crazy. We went through the Holocaust. We never had to go to any shrinks, and you're going to a shrink?" And so I said, "Yeah, I have I think I need it." And so the survivor generation, survivors, it looks like, from any atrocity, are the strong ones who survived, and the children of who you are now will find your way through life and perhaps need counseling, and will hopefully get the counseling, and then your children will see what happens there to the next generation. I might just say one other thing, that Jack Adler has this, and you might want to give it out, Jack. This don't bite the bait that leads to hate. And Jack also, along with a number of other of the survivors, has written his own Holocaust narrative, which I understand now. I didn't even know about this, as in paperback for $11, and his story. And I think that the narratives, the visual histories, are ultimately important. And I am traumatized by what's happening presently. I'm indebted that we have evolved this program into a Holocaust genocide contemporary bioethics program. But for example, with the Syrian chemical war strike, the head of Yad Vashem, the Holocaust memorial in Israel, where they have a memorial to the 1.5 million children also who perished in the Holocaust. What crimes did they commit? Said the world has learned nothing. The United Nations Security Council is paralyzed, is not doing any action, as you said. That what else can we do besides try to remember, year by year, episode by episode? And then I think you're right. You got to speak out, and you got to speak out wherever you are, locally, et cetera, which I'm appreciative to those who allow us to speak out here. Thank you.
I would really add a really important key here that I would like to get this to a positive way. A really important thing that we can do to really help this issue, that the ignorance of the world to what is happening, is really that, as a parent, make sure that your kid are not isolated. Make sure they get the right education and get to know what's happening all around the world. What's really frustrating is some students that I met, when I tell them, "Oh, I'm from Syria." "Oh, where is Syria?" They ask me, "How do you not know that?"
It's on the news every night, right?
Excuse me. That's really big issue. You need to not be just isolated where you at. Get involved more. And I would really I'm thankful for South High School for being a really great high school, diverse high school, who trying to reach out as much as possible. For example, from where I grew up, the Middle East, I'm a good example of how it changed me. For where I grew up, from just where you hear from your community, we have conflict with Israel, but and I always didn't know what Jewish are like, and I always been scared of them, because they were what I heard is conflict against them. But when I get to South and got dry education, where I went to the Jewish Student Connection Club after school and started getting involved, it really changed me. It's just a myth that's we are enemies. It's just a political issue, not anything else. People they're just like us. We're just humans. They're welcome. We eat together. We have fun together. We should not have any reason for being aggressive and hate each other like that.
No, no child is born hating anyone. Hate is a learned experience. We learn it from our home and our social environment. We have to teach the right things to our children and future generations so they understand that we all of one race, the human race, no matter how we identify ourselves.
I feel like it's also majority political. I'm taking an English research class this semester, and I decided to do a semester-long research on the topic of God. And I was just doing my interviews. I looked online trying to figure out who should I interview, and I ended up interviewing a reverend, a rabbi, and an imam. And I was just shocked. Like, they were all so kind and so willing to meet with me, and I had really good rapport with all of them, even though I'm Muslim, and there was no inherent conflict. And so I think it's not even religious. It's nothing like that. Like, it's just political agenda, trying to set people against each other, because when we realize we're the same, we're stronger, and it's harder to have those conflicts kind of gain power. So I think it comes from there.
So first of all, thank you to all four of you for speaking today. You really exhibit courage and are just excellent vocal points for this and allowing the rest of us to learn and grow. My question to all four of you is, how do we find, I'm under the impression that people that have experienced such severe trauma through these experiences, they actually remain to themselves and they don't reach out and speak out about their stories. How do we get more young survivors or people who are child survivors, Holocaust survivors, to come out and tell their stories before they're gone, or before we lose even the child survivor or the young survivors' stories?
There are teachers who really care, and they understand that the Holocaust is for everyone to learn about. I get invited to many places, schools. I wanted to speak where my granddaughter goes to school in San Diego, and San Jose, and I made arrangements to go there. When they have speakers come in, it's usually for high school. She was in 8th grade, but I got to do it, and so she would hear my story there in front of everybody else. And I spoke in synagogues and at churches and all kinds of places, but a lot of schools. And I hope more people would go. Not everyone's a speaker. Not everyone wants to do it.
So I would say, like, to encourage these kids to speak up and talk about it, it's like, it depends on the environment they are at, because like I wouldn't expect, like, I would have gone that far if I was like in, like, how to call, I'm just trying to word this, like in a not an non-diverse place. Like, I know that the fact that I have people around me like who's same place and like kind of encourage me to go forward. And also I think there is a lot of, like, I've noticed recently from my observations that a lot of researchers or journalists are focusing about what's your challenges here after you got to United States, but they don't realize that's not the challenge. This is trust me, this is the easy part. The hard part is like dumb, like we're over with it, but like there's humans who still going through it right now while I'm speaking. Like even though like like a big thank to Miss Helen Thorpe for her new book, The Newcomer. She showed the challenges that we've been through, and it's amazing. But I just think we need more attention to what's the challenging before we get here. Like, we need more people paying attention to this.
And I think part of it is that it's quite simple. Just ask. I mean, someone might be too shy to sit here in front of a crowd and share their story, but if it's one-on-one and if you're able to get through like any language barriers, just ask. Most people are absolutely willing to tell you about their experiences back home and back whatever they went through. And then it's kind of word of mouth. It's not as documented like a book or a movie, but it's there and it can get spread locally through that.
I just wanted to share that it's interesting to think about the reach of the traumas from the Holocaust. My father was in the Army and was one of the people who was one of the liberators of one of the camps. And he wouldn't talk about it ever, could not, would not. So even though you might encourage people to talk about it, I guess some people just can't. And to this day, I wish I could have asked him more, but out of respect, I didn't. And I feel like I lost the opportunity, but yet I couldn't. I mean, it wasn't respectful.
Even some Holocaust survivors don't speak about it. Very.
Or wait for years before they
Tricia,
speak.
is there information to better understand from the museums and the Shoah Project and the foundation who tends to speak out, and are there ways to support people in
Right,
speaking out that
right.
we could sort of understand what are the barriers and
Right.
what are the opportunities, and are there people for whom it would be damaging to share their stories?
Right. I mean, there are a couple aspects of what to address from your question. First, I think that many Holocaust survivors, and we heard a little bit about that last night in our program from last evening in Boulder, our Holocaust survivor, Barbara Steinmetz, said, well, everyone discouraged me from talking right after it happened, right? It was to get on with your life. And even I know many survivors who went to Palestine and after 1948 became Israel. And even their fellow Jewish population in Israel said, it's not that time anymore. We're building a country, put it behind you. And so you see this real silence among Holocaust survivors, either because they want to put it behind them or no one will listen. And then in the 60s, it really comes forward with the Eichmann trial. And I think, the sort of mushrooming of memorial sites that really happened here in the 1990s, our museum, but also museums, private and public museums throughout the country, encouraged survivors to speak, because finally the Holocaust wasn't just a household word, which I guess it had been since the 80s here in this country, but there were really people coming out and speaking, and more children of survivors said, Mom, Dad, you need to get out there and have that story before it disappears. There's so many deniers. You've got to get your story out. And so I know that many survivor volunteers, we have about 100 at our museum, who volunteer throughout the year at the museum, and also tell their stories through a speakers bureau. And so many of them waited until quite late to come out because they thought they didn't want to be heard. I imagine for some people it would be too difficult to speak. Not everybody's a speaker. But I think it's cathartic for most of them, at least to do a video or some kind of documentation. You don't have to stand in front of an audience, but it can be used later for scholars like me, or for people like all of you who are interested in hearing survivors long after their perhaps, especially we've lost a generation of survivors who were older individuals when this happened. Most of the survivors nowadays are like you, child survivors. And so it's really important, and there's been a real emphasis on having survivors speak out, if only to get their testimonies out there, and so that we know.
First of all, I just appreciate all of you being here. This is a very special experience to hear directly from you. My question is, how have you worked, or how are you still working at not allowing the traumatic experiences that you've individually experienced just sort of like harden you as an individual?
Well, as Dr. Silver said, going for some professional counseling is helpful. I belong to a group, the World Federation of Holocaust Child Survivors, because the older survivors, what do you know? You were just a child. I don't know. We experienced when we got in, so we put it aside, went to work, had our families, and then you get to be your, 40s and 50s, and you got problems. They just need to get attention, get help, and so um, I just went about my life. In my survivor community in Columbus, Ohio, people didn't talk about it. Those who had lived through it, adults, they all knew what they knew. They assumed that either people weren't interested in America, and they wouldn't believe it anyway. You know, it was so horrible, so horrible. It's what some people experienced, saw, survived, so on. You go on with life. And I said when I had children, I wanted to be the mother I never had. My biological mother gave me to be smuggled out to save me when I was 2.5. I never saw her again. My hiding mother was good, but then they took me away from her. When my father came, I mean, he had legitimate right, but to me, I felt abandoned. And then he came back and I didn't recognize him. And so I lost that relationship. He wanted to, when he had to remarry, he looked for somebody who wouldn't have more children. He didn't want more children after what he had seen and what had happened. Someone who would love me, who would be a good mother. But there were some women who said, well, let's give her away and let's have our family from the beginning. There really were. Not many, I imagine. He told me these things. And so he married somebody who was good to me and was kind, and we started a new life in America. So, where am I going with this now?
I just think it's extraordinary. Over the last day, we've met the four of you and a couple other folks who've been through extraordinary trauma, and come out the other side not only with intelligence and resilience, but with a human warmth that I would imagine had been beaten out of you. And I think that's kind of the question I'm hearing is, how do you somehow turn an experience that ought to have taken your humanity away, and instead it has imbued all four of you with a sense of honor and responsibility and dignity that is just, it is remarkable, and makes one wonder, what is it about the experience or about you, that you were capable of almost a judo move, of taking this punch and using it against the evil force that was trying to land it.
I was very fortunate when I came to the United States in 1946. I was placed in a very loving, caring foster home. They were so wonderful, caring, extended so much love that I regained faith in humanity. They really helped me get on the right path.
So personally, from where I've been through, what I always do is just always look on the positive side, the good impact that made on me, because I know for sure if I'm just only gonna look on the things that I've lost or been through that were hard, I'm gonna fall apart at the moment. Because for example, if I got here, I don't know how to have a conversation in English. I was in an ELEC program at South High School, which helps you to learn English. And I for first week, I felt like I'm not gonna go through the school. I'm just gonna fail. But also the big part of it is the family support. My mom and my dad was like you can do it. You can definitely learn a third language, because I had to learn Turkish too when I was in Turkey. And I just changed my mindset. Why not learn and why like focus more, and I can do it. Like just thinking positively. And from like after trying that, I started seeing results. And I began taking AP classes after like just being just an English learner in the beginning. And I just because of that result, it made me want to develop more. Like I can do more than that. Like it just thing leads to the other. And I started in student Senate in South High School. And then I was doing, as you said, like you heard, swimming. And I was in the beginning when I first started, I've never swum before. It was just like going at the summer at like a pool and just having fun. But like I went to the pool and started competing with other kids, and I saw kids who were swimming in clubs since they were 7 and they're younger than me. But I didn't look at it as like I'm a failure. I just was like, I can do it, like just like push myself through it. And now made my through to the team captain right now. And like I'm working on like I'm a hopefully gonna make it state. I'm 2 seconds away, so I'm just saying like so just like always look at the positive side. With the right support from the family, from the school, I think anyone can do it.
I have to say, I think you guys are special. Maybe anyone can do it, but not everyone does. And just, for context, you're talking about learning English. You arrived here in 2016. That's 2 years ago.
Correct. But
So just to, because I could not learn.
Okay, I have to say that, but
I
like
could not
I've
learn
learned
Turkish in 2 years.
So for Turkish, I don't write Turkish. I can speak. I didn't learn. I just learned from work, from friends that I met, just like speaking. For English, back in my school, I've always like learned grammars, like he, she, it, stuff like that, but never had an actual conversation. Maybe a little bit when I was like 10 through video games, but like, but like never actual like a real. I never studied. Like studying is like a whole different language. When I got like new words, new like techniques in studying, like we don't have like different education system, but like yeah, just like study and work hard basically.
I just want to say, I actually met Marwan from the first day he came to South High School. We had Arabic class together, and so I got to see all of that happen, which was pretty cool. I remember when I first met him, he was so happy and positive, and I was like, okay, wow, that's awesome. So that's just cool. But in terms of maintaining that warmth and not letting the experience kind of harden you and make you come out somehow a worse person, I think it's part of survivorship. Like when you say the word survivor, it's part of not letting the experience change you in a way that you don't want to be changed. You take it and you look at it, and to some degree you can't impact how you feel. If you have like subconscious psychological trauma, there's, you need help for that. But at the same time, you have to like take control of it. You have to tell yourself, okay, like this happened, that sucks, but I'm not gonna let it change me more than it has to. And in those senses, you go out and you get help, you do whatever you have to turn it into a positive learning experience.
Bill, and then Mark, and then we'll wrap up.
So I'm becoming more and more impressed and appreciative by how special an evening this is. We have a bonding between Holocaust survivors, Iraqi, Syrian refugees, survivors, moderated by the director of the Center for Bioethics and a Holocaust a bioethics expert who's not Jewish, the senior historian of the U.S. Holocaust Museum, who's devoted her life's career, not Jewish. I'm sitting next to Gary Vander Ark, one of the sponsors and supporters of the Center for Bioethics, of Dutch background, one of the leaders of our medical community. I think I got to come out of this feeling that hopeful that there's something, number one, special about America, something that, two, special about Jewish and Muslim refugees of the different generations sitting on the same panel together. And if knowledge can't prevent future crimes against humanity, man's inhumanity toward man, we've got to keep doing this to try and make it happen like that, each of us in our own ways. So I'm very appreciative for you being here. Thank you.
I need to reflect a little bit upon hearing the stories. Makes me so proud to be an American and to be able to support the kinds of transitions that you folks went through. And yet, I feel so uncomfortable living in a country where people need to seek sanctuaries in churches and where we see families being broken up because of immigration policies and things like that. What is it that we can do today, learning from your experience, that will help to keep the country being the welcoming, nurturing kind of a place that we all want it to be?
Unfortunately, when you have a candidate for the highest office in this nation, put women down, Muslims down, Hispanics down, judges down, it's very difficult. That individual turned on the lights for all hate groups around the world. They said, if you can do it as President of the United States, we can do it. There is more anti-Semitism and racism in 2017 and 2018 than it's been in about 10 years. Unfortunately, we have to change the attitude of our leaders.
I feel like most people are good. Most people that you talk to on the street, that's a belief that I'm always going to kind of fight for to keep, because when I think about, our own transition here, my family's transition, we came through IOM. I'm not sure what that stands for, but just remembering all the people who helped us there, people who gave us food and donations and all of that, that matters. I think if we focus on that and if we continue to speak up against our leaders and make it known that what they're saying is not okay, make it known that just because our president is saying really hateful things, that doesn't make it okay. As long as we continue to fight the attitudes that they're trying to portray, it kind of will keep it in people's heads that, okay, just because we have a new leader doesn't mean it has to change who we are as individuals.
So also like there's like a so getting to the United States is a like long process. I lost 3 years of my life just working just to make it through here. You're gonna tell me like background check, like I'm pretty sure that could have been done like in a year maximum. Now I'm like almost 19 years old, turning 19 soon, and still like just a junior at high school. I'm not really like complaining or anything. I'm glad that I got the education at the end of the day. But I'm pretty sure like there's people, I know people that have been waiting for 4 and 5 years till this day to get here. But with the current new immigration laws, it's even harder. So there's people, kids, their future is being wasted. Like they're just like, it's like time is stopped at that period. Like when I was in Turkey, I feel like all the world is moving forward except me. I'm just stuck at my place. Like people need to like knowledge, like recognize how much difficulties that we go through just to get here. Like people can't even get to United States anymore, like as an immigrant. I know family who is still stuck in Turkey, like my uncles and my grandma who's still back in Turkey now. They can't even get here anymore. They say you can get immigrated to Canada or Australia, but that's even slower than here.
Well, if there is hope for the world, it sits at this panel today and in this audience. Thank you all for being here tonight. The final reminder that we have this very special exhibit. Please, there are some desserts outside. Spend some time with the exhibit. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what, Stacy, I do want to give you a chance, if you don't mind, to say a word about the pledge that your organization has created and that the Center for Bioethics has help to support.
First and foremost, thank you to all the speakers who are here. Your courageousness and bravery is an inspiration to everybody sitting in this room, and I think I speak for us all when I say you give us hope and make us believe that the world can be a better place. So thank you first and foremost for that. As I was listening to what you were all saying, I was thinking about a quote that I often use when I am speaking, and that quote is from Richard John Newhouse. It's, "Then and now they ask the same questions. Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall be part of the community that deserves our protection?" And I heard you say before, well, we're just children. That's what was said to you. We're just children. What do we know? And I thought, well, I've heard that just recently, right? When the students from Parkland were trying to speak out. They're just children. What do they know? And I think what we've learned is we all have a voice. And we all have a responsibility. So everybody sitting at this table is different, and everybody, as I'm looking around the room, I'm so pleased to see how many different types of people there are, different ages, different religions, different backgrounds, but there is one thing that unifies us, and Mr. Adler, I think you said that just fantastically earlier, and that's that we are all part of humankind. So what can we do, right? What can we do? And I think what it comes down to is that we all have a voice. Not everybody can sit here and speak like you are all doing, but we can all do something, and we all need to do something. It's not a matter of should, it's a matter of must, because we are in a dire situation and we have a responsibility. So events like this are so important, and that's the reason that the Maimonides Institute for Medicine, Ethics, and the Holocaust is so pleased to work with this program and to support anybody who's interested in doing a program like this, because education, and the proper education, like you said, making sure we're reflecting on the past to protect the future. We're giving the next generation not only the information that they need, but the tools that they need to really make a difference. And so one of the ways that we went about this, the Maimonides Institute for Medicine, Ethics, and the Holocaust, the Center for Human Dignity and Bioethics, Medicine and Health at Misericordia University, which, by the way, is a small Catholic university in northeastern Pennsylvania that has been incredibly supportive of all of the work that I've done having to do with the Holocaust. The Department of Bioethics and the Holocaust of the UNESCO Chair of Bioethics in Haifa, and Candles Holocaust Museum and Education Center, which was founded by another child survivor, Eva Moses Kaur. We created a pledge and we brought it out there. We're so pleased that other organizations like the University of Colorado have taken that up. So it's a pledge to preserve human dignity and healthcare. I'm not going to read it to you, but on the whole, the idea is the unifying theme here is that we all are human and we all need to treat each other with respect. It's not enough to just say that, we're all part of humankind. We need to start taking care of each other. So I do have copies of the pledge, and I would encourage all of you, if you go to www.misericordia.edu/human-dignity-pledge, you can sign it. We have about 600 signatures from countries all over the world: Argentina, Australia, Israel, Canada, Poland, the Dominican Republic. And the idea is together, right, we can take these little steps. We don't all need to necessarily be able to speak in front of people. But, this is an easy thing, right? This is a step. This is something that we can do. And so on behalf of all of the organizations that have been part of this, I want to personally give each of you a copy of the pledge, and also these neat little pins that you may have seen some of us wearing. It's our hope that, one day, 5 years from now, you'll be somewhere and you'll see somebody wearing this pin, and you know that they support the idea of human dignity. So we just wanted to give each one of you these. And again, I think I speak on behalf of everybody here when I say thank you so very much for having the courage and the bravery to do what you do. And I certainly hope that these events continue, and I hope that your voices are leading the way to creating a better future for all of us.
Thank you all. Please join us for some dessert.